I'd say we have a pretty clear message today. God is love, according to the second reading. And in the gospel reading, Jesus says, "Remain in my love, love one another as I love you." We have definitely heard that many times before. And that's fine, because that's true, and it's important. It is important to be reminded of that. God is love. And some people live that out a little bit better than other people. Right off the bat, Pope Francis. I think Pope Francis is doing a fantastic job at that. As a priest, he certainly makes my life easier. I know some people have issues with Pope Francis, but I think Pope Francis is doing an excellent job at expressing that fact that God is love. You should respect him, if only for that. So thinking about it, I wanted to spend today talking about a particularly loving person. You know, like a case study for God is love. So I sat down and I thought about the readings, and I pondered about particularly loving people in the world. You know, famous people that we all know, as well as individuals in my own life. And after a while, it took me about half a day, after a while I realized that everyone worthy of mention here, God is love, everyone worthy of mention is a person of some kind of faith. You know, I found that interesting. See, I have a lot of people in my life without faith. And of those people, many of them are highly intelligent. They are highly intelligent. Some of them are quite successful. Most of them care about civil rights and the environment. And all of them know the difference between right and wrong. Their ideas of what is right and what is wrong doesn't always match up with us and the teachings of the church, but they're trying. They are trying to do the right thing. It would be uncharitable for me to say otherwise about them. In all those ways, I am proud of them. They have my respect in all of those ways. But thinking about it, they are not particularly loving. For all of their intelligence and passion, they are not genuinely the people I can say are the loving people in my life. Now, I'm not saying they're completely loveless with hearts of stone or anything like that. No, clearly not. Love is way more powerful than that. To completely 100% shut love out of your life, that takes a great deal of effort and a little bit of help from that guy with the horns and the pitchfork and the goatee. Not easily done. So I'm not saying they're completely loveless. But without faith, some part of their love is missing. It's just not there. I look at their lives and I just don't see it. Honestly, I do not see that human warmth that I have come to cherish when I'm with the people I really enjoy being around. And so I say here and now that there is a link between faith and love. It is real. I don't know exactly what it is, because as we all know, there are plenty of people out there with faith, but not too much love. All right, so obviously it's not a one-to-one direct relationship. That relationship is there. In spite of the exceptions, faith and love belong together. They are better together. In that way, I think of people. I think of Bishop Skilba. You know, he was so patient with me and the others when we were students in the seminary. I could ask him or tell him anything, and I knew he would listen to me and hear me with love. I trusted him completely, and I still do today. A day with Bishop Skilba is better than a day without Bishop Skilba, even if it's 5 minutes of chatting in the hallway. I think of my 2 years in Africa. You know, I know I've talked about this a number of times. There were 2 of us Americans in my village, very rare, Jenny and me. I lived alone. Jen had her own house, but she lived in a communal courtyard, so she had a host family that she lived with and spent a great deal of time with. And I think of her host father who was a practicing Muslim, and he welcomed us, both of us, completely without hesitation, even though neither of us were Muslim. He welcomed us. He talked with us. He worked on our French with us. We were always welcome to have dinner with his family, even though both of us made like 10 times as much money as him. He still shared what he had. And he was always laughing, he was always joyful, and he loved to hear about us. He loved to hear stories about America. I will never forget his face. As I explained to him, he had this face, he had equal parts amusement and terror as I tried to explain to him just how cold Wisconsin gets in the winter. It's like, so it's like being in the freezer all the time? Yeah, like it's like being in the freezer forever. And it's cold for you? Yeah. So what happens if I go to Wisconsin in February? Well, I assume you freeze solid. we had a great talk, but that was him. That was him. And I miss him terribly. When people tell me that Islam is an inherently violent religion, I think of him and I smile and nod politely, because the love of God was palpable in that simple Muslim African villager. And in a general way, I think of all my friends who have room in their heart for Christ. I thought about the last 20 years of my life. And the people who had room for Christ in their hearts, they were the ones I ultimately enjoyed being around more. I mean, it's uncanny how consistent the pattern was, like Heather. Heather was fun, but she wasn't just fun, she was faithful. Girls who are still of marriable age, those of you who are still dating, pay attention to this. Guys are never interested in a fun girl for long. If you're fun and nothing else, you will get plenty of attention. But they will get bored with you and they will walk away faster than you'd ever believe. Happens every time. Heather was fun, but she wasn't just fun, she was faithful. And no one ever got bored of Heather. For me, I loved being around Heather because I knew that when I was around her, she would never say a bad word to me. She would never say a bad word about me. She would never say a bad word about other people around me. She was better than that. She was the kind of person that loves other people as Christ loved her. And it showed. And mark my words, I am not the only one who noticed that. She's happily married, so at least one other person noticed that. But that's Heather. And by contrast, I think of my ex-Christian ex-friend Kyle. I miss Kyle. We had fun. We had a lot in common. We had a lot of similar interests. But Kyle would explode at me for the tiniest reason. And mercy and compassion and understanding were always in short supply with Kyle. I was always on the defensive with Kyle. Needless to say, I don't hang out with him anymore. I miss him. I miss the good times we had. But it's just not worth it anymore. It's just not. The loving attitude, which I believe once existed in his soul, that loving attitude just isn't there anymore. And that is a tiny difference that changes everything. God is love. Love is of God. Where there is love, God is nearby. When there is no room for love, there is no room for God. All of you have what it takes to be loving people. You have the faith, you have the hope, you have the community to help you through it. That is the gift that belongs to Christians of any denomination. That is true. And as Catholics, you get that faith, hope, and love in the tangible, that means touchable, form of the sacraments. Whether you remember it or not, when you were a baby, you felt it. When that water hit your head and you were welcomed by Christ in his church, you have faced your sins in the sacrament of confession. You have received the very body and blood of Christ in the Eucharist. That is tangible faith. That is hope in the palm of your hand. That is perfect divine love right there at the bottom of the chalice. That is powerful stuff. Every morsel is powerful stuff. So much of the world is cruel, merciless, shallow, and loveless. Don't be a part of that. Be apart from that. That was a pun. I promised my friends I would always say it's a pun whenever I make a pun. But don't be a part of that. You can be a beacon of light, of truth, of faith, and of love. And just you wait. Just you wait. Years from now, people are going to look back on their life like I did this week. They are going to look back on their life and they're going to think about the people they liked being around and the people they could trust. They're going to think of you. And whether they realize it or not, they will recognize Christ in you. And that is exactly what happens when we love one another as Christ loved us.